When people talk about series from their childhood that really influenced them and had an impact on them, I can honestly understand why so many people bring up Alvin Earthworm's Super Mario Bros. Z. This combination of Mario and Sonic characters in a story heavily inspired by Dragon Ball Z's action style. It's something that for a kid in the early 2000s, they would eat that up and would love. Those were kind of the big things even in the mid 2000s. Those were still the reigning things of if you were a kid and you liked this, you were seen as the coolest dude around. And to mix them all together into this well animated and I'd say somewhat well written for the time series, it felt like something that we would never get officially. Because this was before even the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, and those were just mini games. And also, this was a lot of people's first introduction to things like Newgrounds and their content, which would go on to influence so many people to become things like animators, artists, and so much more. You know, while I'm not going to say Newgrounds' history is this squeaky clean perfect thing, it's inspired so many artists and creators that I feel like, it was worth it. As for someone like me, I wasn't really that much of a Newgrounds kid. I mostly stuck to places like YouTube and whatever generic slapped together Flash sites were available on the rest of the net. And, the basics like homestarrunner.com and drunk that emails and the like. But that didn't mean that I didn't also have my own exposures to action-based fan series and sprite series. Like a lot of other kids, there was Nazo Unleashed, and so many other people were learning Flash by animating video game sprites and making them do Dragon Ball-inspired things. But my big influence was this other YouTube series that I found randomly on a whim. And it's stuck in my mind in the decade plus since I've seen it. And it's one that I have not seen anyone else on YouTube talk about. And that just makes me so excited because that means I get to share this legitimately unknown hidden gem with so many others. And I really hope you get to see why it's stuck with me for so many years. So strap in. Welcome to the second episode of the Crossover Chronicle. Hi there. It's been a while. Over a year, in fact, since my last real video of any kind on this channel. I wanted to make so much more last year, but I just didn't have the time and motivation. Life kind of got super busy and chaotic, and I made big plans on how I wanted this channel to run, and I didn't want to come back to making stuff until I had a more firm grasp on what I wanted to do and have more parts in place so I could do it. And as you can see, clearly I've made a big change. This is something that I've always kind of wanted to do with the channel, have some kind of avatar to represent myself, and the idea of using character sprites, kind of like from VNs and the like, has always been in the back of my mind, especially since people in the pony community and all kinds of other communities on YouTube have done similar. It was just finding the right artist to help with that. And for this, I got the amazing Tailsy Evergreen to make this series of sprites for me. They're so well designed and so expressive and so colorful. I cannot thank her enough. I'll be sure to have a link to her card where you can check out more info about her and where to contact her if you want to commission her for any kind of project or get sprites like these. Really consider helping her with some projects she has and supporting her. She's worth all the money. Promise. I also want to thank my friend Steve Twisp for this background here. I always kind of wanted to have a character and also, so having a background makes sense, and I think this one looks very nice and gets the vibe I'm trying to get across in this channel down. A link to his Twitter will be in the description, of course. There's a few other people I want to thank that I'll probably get into at the end of this video, and I did thank them also in my announcement video. This is a big step forward for this channel, and I really hope even just these sprites in this background and having all these pieces together help inspire me to make more videos and more content like this, because I like talking about things I like and I like sharing this stuff to the world. So I think it'd be good if we just we got our introductions out of the way, we got our thanks out of the way. Let's jump into it and talk about Dimension MixUp. Dimension MixUp is a sprite-based crossover series made by Jeremy Christian of the YouTube channel The Choco Bro, originally known back then as Choco Bro Cinemas. The series started all the way back on July 18th, 2007 and lasted all the way until August 22nd, 2008. The plot of Dimension MixUp is actually relatively simple. It follows characters from 5 different dimensions as they all cross paths due to a dimensional mix-up and have to learn to work together with each other and team up in a race against time to find the Chaos Emeralds and keep them out of the reach of the villainous Dr. Eggman and the assorted villains of their own dimensions that they came from. The cast consists of characters from the Super Mario Bros. Series, Sonic the Hedgehog, the Hasbro Interactive Frogger games for the PS1, characters from Invader Zim, and Calvin and Hobbes from Calvin and Hobbes. I feel like the plot is relatively simple enough where I wouldn't need to do a beat-by-beat or more general summary of things like others would do in things like game reviews or media overviews of the like. It's your simple characters meet up and go from place to place, fight and get objects kind of beat. Something like, say, the original Dragon Ball, or if you're a comic crossover fan, think something like the JLAX Avengers comic, if you've read that, or at least watched Linkara's review of it. So instead of going into all that, I think it'd be much better for me to do more of a, here's what I like about the series and here's why kind of thing, and go more into detail on the things that make up the series and save a more detailed plot synopsis for the later parts where story plays a much bigger role there. So getting into why I really like this series is the fact that when you look at the sources that it's pulling from, there's a whole lot more uniqueness and variety to it. Because when you look at other sprite-based series that were out at the time, aside from Super Mario Bros. Z and the like, they were kind of sticking to it's Mario and it's Sonic crossing over, and maybe if you're lucky you'd get Kirby or the like added into the mix. And this isn't to discourage any of those creators or people who made this kind of stuff back then, because a lot of effort went into making all of these types of things and learning animation. It just, I feel like saying this series has Invader Zim and Calvin and Hobbes characters in it makes it so much more unique and is more likely to get someone's attention when trying to recommend this. Even to more niche fans of this kind of stuff, seeing those names in there probably is going to get more eyes on it. And that's what I like. I like that it's unique and it feels like it's something that you really couldn't see somewhere else. Another reason I really like this series is the fact that it not only has female characters as part of the main cast, but it lets them get in on the fight. That might sound a bit weird nowadays where modern sprite series have female characters as part of the main crew and involved in things, but back in the mid-2000s, it was a whole different story. These were mostly younger boys writing for a lot of these things, so naturally a lot of times there'd be this kind of aversion to female characters in anything they made. Not like it was hate for them or anything, but it was more like oh, they're girls, so I don't know how to write for them, or I don't like how they're being written in the games they show up in, so I simply won't use them. Famously, Mecha Sonic killed half of Sonic's cast in SMBZ, leaving only Sonic and Shadow left, and a lot of whole other series like Sonic parodies at the time mostly just used characters like Amy and Cream as jokes because they were very widely not liked at the time. So it's really cool seeing them not only here, but part of the fight, part of interacting with others, part of the plot. And they're also, I'd say, very well written. I give props to Jeremy for using both Amy and Cream, both heavily disliked at the time. He doesn't use Rouge here, but that was still kind of a bridge too far for most creators at the time, so no faults there. Keeping on that talk about the more unique series being represented here. I think the use of Invader Zim is both fascinating and works as a great eye-opener to get more people into this series, just to see how they're being used here, but also because it kind of really reflects the time capsule this series was really made in back in 2007. Because back then, mid-2000s, very early mid-2000s, was still kind of when the net and every young person on it still was aware of or had a hook on Invader Zim. Even though it had been canceled already for a few years now, people still love talking about it and making stuff for it. Own fan communities, fan art, fan videos, everything. So seeing them being used here, it feels like both a surprise but also a no-brainer, knowing that this was 2007. I was a major Zim fan because even though it had been off the air, that was still in the era of petitions to bring back Zim, and its style of humor and look were still very much in, with Jonan Vasquez just having this huge grip on internet teens and preteens and everything like that. And I like how they're used here. It's not like I'd say the characters are not themselves, because Zim very much feels like Zim. It's just now he has a whole bunch of others that he has to kind of care for, but also pretend to care for, because they'll help him capture Earth, even if they're not aware of it. And I really like it. I like seeing Zim kind of get in on action. Because again, Invader Zim is not a series that I'd say was known for having a thriving combat scene. It had random violence because that was funny, but not like characters were pulling out Dragon Ball Z-esque fist fights or the like. It is also interesting seeing Gur, of all characters, also get in and switch to a more, I guess, his combat mode. I have no idea what to call it. When in the series, he just does whatever. But I'm not complaining. I find that fun. And even Dib gets in on it. And it's cool to see. And you can tell that Jeremy is a big Invader Zim fan because they mention him having tax ship, and they have like all these references to Invader Zim specific episodes and moments. It's not just like, oh, look, it's Invader Zim. You can tell the kid making this was a fan. Again, I like that. I like when people put their own interests in things, and I like when you can tell, oh, these are people who really love the series. It's not like in a, oh, they should hire fans, they'll make the better product. No, this is like, these are clearly labors of love, and that's why I love them. That's why I love seeing kids fan projects or sprite series or the like, when you can tell the people making it are fans. I think the other choice here that makes things really interesting is the most interesting one of the bunch is Calvin and Hobbes. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think, and I have no evidence for this is just kind of me going off of memories and being really into it at the time, but I think the mid-2000s were also kind of where this resurge of popularity for Calvin and Hobbes happened. I mean, the comics have always kind of been on and off popular, and you know, they're always going to be inspirational, and they're great for kids, and they're usually like the first comics people read next to Garfield. But for some reason, in the dawn of the net and the 2000s net era, they got really, really popular. Fan art for them were all over the place. There was that one short animation film for it that got really popular from Italy, I think. There was always kind of on and off rumors of a Calvin and Hobbes movie, which was never going to happen because Bill Watterson would die before he let that happen. But seeing them here, it kind of shows like, yeah, there was an era where these were some of the biggest things on the internet, with both older people who grew up with it as a kid and the new kids reading it. I think the best comparison is it kind of had the same presence on the net that Azumanga Daioh did, where it was kind of everywhere and you would see it in everything. And even if you didn't know what it was, you would still see it everywhere. Though I think more people would probably know what Calvin and Hobbes was compared to Azumanga Daioh. And here's the thing about Calvin and Hobbes, that at least to me and a few others, and I might be wrong on this, but it is one of those series where it looks like it's deceptively easy to make, but if you want to really recreate its mood and feelings, it is one of the more harder hills to get over. And what I mean by that is, look at all the kind of fan-made comics about Calvin having a kid, or being a grown man, or growing up and the like, and when you look at them, you know, the people who are making them are clearly fans and they love Calvin and Hobbes to death. But when you look at them, there's always kind of this feeling like it's missing something. And I can't even put into words what it's missing. And again, I don't want to be rude, but I think about that fan-made strip Hobbes and Bacon, I think. And I look at that, and it's very much, it's nice, it's good feeling, the art is lovely, it does its own style while building off what Watterson made. But there was never this feeling like, oh, this is the natural evolution for Calvin and Hobbes. This is, you know, this feels like I'm right back where we came from. It feels more like the, oh, well, Calvin and Hobbes has this and this, so maybe it would have this, or maybe it would be this. And I think this, by keeping Calvin, you know, his age, somehow this sprite series made by a young kid in 2007 feels like what Calvin and Hobbes would be like. And what I mean by that is that this whole thing and sprite series in general of the time, they feel like something Calvin would be into. I don't want to be like one of those people who go, well, if Calvin and Hobbes existed today, Calvin would be on his damn phone, am I right? I feel like he would still find ways to have fun in a era of video games and cartoons, modern cartoons, and that kind of thing. And this whole adventure feels like something that he would go on. Because when you look at the adventures he goes on in the comics with Spaceman Spiff and Stupendous Man and all that and all of his imaginations, it's not just one style. Sometimes it's Spaceman Stiff and it's a style of a 1950s sci-fi serial. Sometimes it's a romantic comedy. Sometimes it's a drama, I think. And they're different styles. It's not just one art style and now aliens are there. No, Watterson would emulate different styles of the stuff he was into as a kid and stuff like that. I think the idea carries over here because Mario and Sonic and Invader Zim and Frogger, those are not all the same style. They're all vastly different styles. They're all vastly different worlds with different ways of their approach to writing and their approach to character design and all that. And Calvin would get into this. It's the ultimate kind of fun for someone like him. There's thrilling action, there's chases, there's drama. You know, he gets into a feud with Amy and it very much feels like his feud with Susie. I'm not saying like, oh, this is all made up, none of this is happening. What I'm saying is, this is the kind of thing that Calvin would get into. And it's not just like, it's all wins. He still loses, he still gets beat up, he still gets in scenarios where he can't win. And that happened to him in his own imagination and his games. What I'm saying is, this very much feels like it captures the energy of the kind of imagination and adventures Calvin would go on. And Hobbes too, he's done well. He's both, you know, he's kind of the semi-older brother role to Calvin, semi-mentor, but a lot of times he's just the tiger and he's getting in on the action. And of course he'd get in on it. Calvin likes imagining that dude beat the crap out of him. So of course he'd be able to take on giant robots and dinosaurs and all that kind of stuff. And I think what really makes this interesting is, even compared to Invader Zim, there's even less, like, there's both more and less to go off of here compared to Invader Zim. Because Invader Zim, that at least had, like, lots of violence in a comedic sense, and there was also, you know, audio from the show to go with it. With Calvin and Hobbes, because Bill Watterson was so protective of it, all they have to go off of is just the comics themselves. There's no voice lines to pull from, no games to use, no nothing. At least with Invader Zim, he still made cameos in a few Nickelodeon games on the Game Boy and that sort, aside from episodes and stock art. Calvin and Hobbes, the whole thing here, they're just edited scans from the comic panels. And that's just cool to me because there's effort here. And I'm pretty sure Jeremy is the one doing the lines for Calvin here himself. Like, you listen and that is a young kid with a mic with no knowledge of how audio mixing works. And I don't know how it does either.
Hey. What?
But very much, that's a kid. And that just like adds to it. Like this, there's this charm of going off of so little and still making a lot from it. And I want to go more into that, but I'll probably do that more when I talk about the action itself. Also, you know, Frogger's here too, but I know nothing about Frogger. The most I know of the games from this era being the PS1 and the, I think, Game Boy Frogger games just comes from the Nitro Rad videos on them. But they're also kind of in that same impressiveness of all they have representing them is just 2-3 photos of the characters. But again, I'll get more into that in the talking about the action section. But yeah, Yeah. So now let's move on to one of the big attractors for this series, and one of the big attractors for sprite animations and series like this in general, the fighting and the animation itself. And I'm pretty sure that by watching these clips I've showed throughout this whole video, you can tell that this was not done in the same way that a lot of other sprite animations at the time were done. Not like Super Mario Bros. Z or anything else like it, and there's a reason for that. You see, back at this era, there were mainly two ways to make sprite animations, at least from what I can recall. It was Adobe Flash, because everyone was using Adobe Flash for everything, and it was Sony Vegas, back when it was still called Adobe Vegas. I want to say Adobe something was used for this, but I have no idea what of their programs were being used and what Adobe programs are used for sprite animation now. And by looking at this, you can kind of tell this series used none of those. Its main source of animation came from Microsoft PowerPoint. That's right. The slideshow software was used to animate this whole series. And that's just, it's amazing to me. That will always capture my interest in my mind, and I love pointing that out and going, yes, this is a full series animated entirely in PowerPoint with just a little bit of help from, I believe, After Effects. And of course, Windows Movie Maker if the opening and closing didn't tip you off. And I still think it works well because this still follows the rules that a lot of other sprite animations at the time use of, if you have enough for it that can make a character reasonably look like they're fighting, then you can go for it. And while at the beginning it's kind of rough, like there's a whole bunch of moments where you can tell stuff like masking and cutting of character sprites and images isn't fully done well, because again, this is a young kid when he did it, it still evolves into something truly amazing. And that's not even getting into what comes later down the line, but that's a whole other day. So one thing I should note is that in sprite animation, there's like not a rule book or guidebook to anything. There's no set commandments that one must follow to make a good animation or anything like that, or to get accepted into a community or group. There's nothing like that. But I do think there are some underlying kind of rules that everyone just kind of assumes going in, because otherwise it's one of those things where anyone can do it if they know how to pick up an animation software and make sprites move and work in them. And I think the number one philosophy or rule is that if you want to put a character in your series or in your animation, that's fine. You just got to make sure they have the right sprites for it. They got to have things for it. Say, for example, someone like SpongeBob. If you wanted to put him in an animation or your own crossover series, that could probably work, because SpongeBob's been in a ton of 2D games, and a lot of them are built off similar engines that the game that came before it would use. So that means you could keep it visually consistent and not have him switching models that much. You could use him as a character because there's so much to work with, and there's sprites of him taking damage, sprites of him attacking, jumping, all that stuff. So this comes to the issue of, well, what do you do with characters like Zim or Calvin, who either have been in only a few games or no games at all? Well, looking at their models and looking how they move, it's simple. Just cut them out from images. This is more apparent with Calvin because all he has are images from his comics, and even though he shifts around, he mostly wears the same outfits in most of his comics, so that means you've got a lot. So there are tons of images of him getting hit, images of him giving hits. And the same can kind of be said for Zim, because Zim as a character is very posable. He moves around a lot, so you've got a lot to work with. And there's also things like giving him robot arms to use, or a laser blaster, or his ship. So there's ways around it. This just shows, again, if you have ways to plug in characters doing the actions you need, then you can use them. Because otherwise, if you wanted to do your own thing and you didn't have a character with the corresponding sprites, then you'd either have to know how to edit them, or make your own custom ones, or know someone who could make custom ones. Otherwise, you're kind of out. This just makes me think of, I swear I heard the idea that in someone's sprite series, they wanted to put Mona from WarioWare on a team with Shadow, and I'm ashamed that never came to fruition because that would be entertaining as hell. So an example of a fight I really like comes from early on in the series, right after all the characters meet up, and naturally, of course, they get into a big fight because because what isn't a crossover series without all the heroes getting into a slugfest first? And I'd say they're all on even ground. It's more just kind of one smacks one, the other smacks back, and then someone else pops in, that kind of thing. It's standard, but it's still impressive, again, knowing that this was all made with Microsoft PowerPoint. And then Shadow shows up and gets everyone to kind of stop the fight, because also Eggman shows up. Eggman's after the Chaos Emeralds, which everyone else was fighting for, and now that everyone realized this guy wants them, Sonic rallies them all together with the singular idea of,
get that motherfucker!
And of course, they all charge him and give him a rather heavy beating. But just because he's down doesn't mean Eggman's out. And he pulls out one of my favorite things ever. I have always loved the giant egg robos from the Sonic games. The one from Sonic 2 gets a lot of attention, especially due to its use in Generations and then go-to use of giant robots in follow-up games. But I've always had a special love for the ones from the end of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, known by fans, and I think even its official titles, as the Kyodai Egg Robo and the Doomsday Zone's final boss, the final weapon. And can you blame me? Look at these things. They're these giant hulking masses that look like they can do so much damage. They move around. They've got human-like appearances. That means they have arms that can grab things and smash things. Just the way it looks, especially the final weapons look in Doomsday Zone, it's just amazing. And here it is no different. Now, while it originally uses the Sonic 2 Egg Robo, it mostly switches to using the Doomsday Zone's final weapon and Sonic 3 and Knuckles' Kyodai Egg Robo. And this is a fight that just wowed me the first time I saw it. Because it isn't just a fight where all the characters just start beating it up. No. This is a giant robot fight, which means that it's got tons of weapons and it is just laying the smackdown on these characters, on these fools. And while they're able to get some hits in, it's mostly just sweeping them. And it can't just be rush and attack. No, they have to go in teams. They have to find ways around it. Mario has the ingenious idea of going into the thing and sabotaging it from the inside, which is super cool. And it uses visuals from Scrap Brain Zone, which is also just genius. I love that idea. And it's just got so many functions. And even as they're just smashing this thing and disabling all its functions, it's just still attacking. It just keeps attacking and attacking. And that's what a boss like this should be. It's just this giant mech, and it's just destroying everything, with the title of this episode literally being Doomed to Leave Forest. It's just bringing the house down. And our heroes they're giving it everything they've got. They're just throwing everything they got at it. And while it's going through hardship after hardship after hardship, they're still able to they're slowly whirling it down. And just as they think they're about to win, it goes into a pinch mode, which is also just, it is amazing. I just remember years ago, the first time I watched this years and years, over a decade ago, and it just wowed me the whole time. And that's why I love this. Like, even with all these animation issues and not using the usual software, they still make this fight against a giant robot feel as epic as it should be. And I'm always gonna love it for that. This fight is amazing. So after that amazing fight, the adventure really begins. Chaos Emeralds are scattered throughout multiple dimensions, Eggman's after them, and our team is after him, trying to get the emeralds beforehand. And the first location they end up is the universe from Invader Zim. And it really is kind of weird to see all these colorful characters with more kind of, not soft, but more friendly designs, mixed in with the world of Jonan Vasquez's ugly, horrifying art. And because the emeralds are in multiple places, that means our teams have to split up. So one group goes to, I forget what it is, but it's like a water tank or septic tank or something gross. And one of the emeralds is in there while the others go into the sewer. And Calvin is on the team that goes to this tank area, and he goes in after the emerald, which is in the water, which leads to him drowning because it calls back to he can't swim. So that's nice. So again, the callbacks in this are very much for fans and not just in a, hey, you remember this moment? You remember this moment? Kind of way. And that leads into Knuckles going in to save him, but he fails. So Luigi has to save the day. And then Team 2 in the sewers get ambushed by Eggman. Well, sort of ambushed, because then after that, it leads into a big fight through this giant sewer system with everyone just kind of ganging up on him. One of the things I can say in this series that I just find really funny is that Eggman just can't get a win in this, like, at all. Whenever he shows up, even if he gloats for like 5 seconds, immediately after, he gets tackled and beat up. He just can't claim any wins, even though I think it'd be funny if he just grabbed someone, just slammed them around like it's from the IDW comics. Shame, again, he's stuck in his mostly max or just kind of running poses, because I'd love to see this dude just beat up this small child and tiny animals. That'd be funny. But back with Team 1, you know, they get Luigi ends up rescuing Calvin from the tank, and they get the emerald. So now they have to go to a boiler room in the school, and that leads into a fun fight against a whole bunch of egg robos, and it's a race against time because pressure in there is building up and the whole place is gonna explode. And, you know, a bunch of different fights going on at once, but it's really cool. But what really is impressive to me about this fight is just the sewer segment, because Jeremy makes the backgrounds loop. And it's kind of one of those things where, like, if you look, you can very easily see where the picture ends and then starts again. You can just see it's looping it same over and over again, kind of like how you probably could with my intro, since I'm not good at it either. But it's cool to me. I don't know, I like something about fighting in looping these long, endless tunnels, fighting through these giant echoing sewers. Eggman busts out 2 machines and he mostly gets beaten up in them, but he still gets at least a few hits in. But I don't know, there's just something about fighting in a sewer and the way the backgrounds work and how they move and how it really kind of gives this feeling of everyone's moving at top speed and clashing into each other that just sells the fight for me. I don't know, I found it cool. So to get to the next fight I want to talk about, we're going to have to do just a tiny bit of summarizing. So after having to leave Zim's world, the next place with the Chaos Emerald is in Frogger's world. And once they head there, a lot of stuff happens. But again, as I've mentioned, I'm not into Frogger, so I can't say much on this. What I can say is that Metal Sonic makes his appearance here, and they are some pretty cool moments. Shadow leaves the group because everyone's too busy getting into arguments with each other instead of going after the emerald. So, you know, they're kind of screwed without him somewhat. And after that, Zim leaves the team after they all find out that he's kind of been working against them, / his plans to conquer Earth, and Dib takes his place, so that's fun. Then they get captured by Eggman for a bit, but they all get out and there's a bit of an air chase, all that good stuff. And then after that, they have to go to Mario's world to see what's up. And that leads into another giant fight. This time now, since they see Zim has taken over, and since he's an enemy, they're also fighting him, but also Wario and Waluigi show up and they're up to no good, so they join in the fight. And then of course Bowser has to join in and make some trouble, but that's later on. The first part of this fight mostly consists of the gang having to deal with Wario and Waluigi, and they are pretty much the heavy hitters as expected. And you know, Mario and Luigi do take care of them using their usual tricks and trades, but it's still a good fight. But there's just one moment that makes me just go eee on the inside, and that's this moment where Wario gets knocked away and they think he's down, he's defeated, they have their little celebration, but then you hear him get back up and he's doing something, and like, you know, oh, he's gonna use a power-up of his own, what's it gonna be? And he re-emerges and he is rocking his WarioWare look and motorcycle. And to me, that is just pure. It's just, that's just amazing to me. I like power-ups that are done like that. And he doesn't get that much of an overhead, like, advantage for too long. He gets his butt kicked again. But still, that's just cool to me. I like when stuff from Wario's games are brought up, because a lot of times when he's mentioned in things, he's kind of just the basic, he punches and charges a lot. They don't mention a lot of stuff from the Wario Land games or the WarioWare games, and this using that look for him and that kind of power for him, it's just mwah. Of course, this all leads up to a fantastic grand finale. And before we can get that, we need to do just a bit more summarizing. So our heroes got picked up by the aliens from Calvin and Hobbes, the Star Moon Alliance. And we figure out they've been at war / running from the Urkin from Invader Zim. And thankfully, with Calvin being the leader of Earth and everyone wanting to get rid of Eggman before he destroys all dimensions, they're able to strike an alliance. This is also where the heroes all figure out that they've been traveling through different dimensions and not through time as they originally surmised. Meanwhile, Eggman's been hard at work rebuilding a brand new Death Egg with the help of characters from Mario and Frogger's universe combined. So yeah, that's a big thing. And apparently this thing is so powerful that it can just kind of shift through multiple universes at once. So it's a giant issue. And it's loading up a brand new weapon to destroy the Earth, or at least do some major damage to the thing. Thankfully, our heroes come in to take them down with the help of, again, the Star Moon Alliance and the Urkin Empire, bringing them firepower to breach the defenses of the outer fortress. And it makes for a grand battle. Like, this is a grand, even before they get in the damn thing, this is a damn grand space battle. We got lasers, we got spaceships, we got countdowns to cannons, we got the Super Egg Blaster, which is just loading up and ready to fire. And then it finally gets ready and it fires, and because Calvin was smart and he got everyone to put up their shields, it does no damage. Again, Eggman's not taking any wins in this series. So that's out of the way, so the team starts their assault and moves in on the fortress. Thankfully, also Zim rushes to their aid because he's realized he cares about his friends, but not before they all have to deal with Metal Sonic, and he's got 2 Chaos Emeralds, and he's just laying a beat down on all those suckers. He's just beating the shit out of them, and it's amazing, and it's great, and you can see this dude's he's just tired of it. And also, since this is a post-Heroes game, he's also talking a lot, so that's fun. And with each Chaos Emerald he gets, he grows more powerful and gets a new form. So he starts on his base Metal Sonic form, but then he gets his Neo form, and then he gets his Mecha Sonic form, and then finally Super Mecha Sonic form. He's just laying down a beatdown that's unmatched, so that's fun. And then Invader Zim and Gur show up, and they're, everyone's like, what do we do? He's got the Chaos Emeralds. Zim, Gur, get out of here. You can't beat him. And then Zim shows, oh wait, no, he's got the Master Emerald too, because the bad guys had captured the Master Emerald, but they freed the Master Emerald, and Gur gets to use the Master Emerald, and it gives the most amazing thing for anyone who grew up in the 2000s and had to see Gur everywhere. Super Gur. He gets his own super form, and he just beats the shit out of Mecha Sonic. It's like it's one-sided at that point. He just beats him up and destroys and knocks the Chaos Emeralds out of Metal Sonic. And we get to one of my favorite parts of this and the weirdest part of Sonic's character throughout this whole series. So Metal Sonic's beaten. He's literally on the ground, barely able to stand up. And he starts begging. Literally please don't. I'll do anything. Please don't kill me. Like, he's begging for his life. Like, he's going to be killed. And Sonic goes, yeah, no. You've had your chance. And then he just goes, Gur, kill him now. And Gur does so. In this series, Sonic does not hold back. If he has an opportunity to try and kill someone, he will fully take that. Is this what people want Sonic to be like in the IDW comics? Is that what that argument's about? That they want him to just straight up murk people? So then everyone goes and confronts Eggman in the main hall, and they're like, it's over, Eggman, you gotta give up. But then he goes full Sonic Adventure 2 and goes, joke's on you, jackasses. I've got the E-Series, and I've got hostages. And also it's revealed that Wario and Waluigi tried to betray him, so he had to tie them up, so maybe that's why the blaster did jack. Who knows? And everyone's like, what do we do? What do we do? And Eggman's like, give over the Chaos Emeralds or I'll kill all your friends. And it's a real kind of ultimatum type of moment. And Sonic's like, all right, fine, you can have them. And he gives over the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald, and it's really sad. Then all of a sudden, Shadow the Hedgehog shows right back up, beats up Eggman, takes down every single one of the E robots in a single go, proving that he is the capital GOAT of this series and the Sonic franchise still. And everyone's like, Shadow, you're back. And it's like, he was here because Omega was here. And that's basically it. And then everyone just, it becomes chaos as Eggman keeps trying to take everyone down, but they're all fighting. And Bowser's still around, and Mario gets into a big fight with him, and then he launches a giant fireball at Bowser, just ready to finish him off after remembering all the stuff he's had to deal with Bowser with the last few games. And he just launches this giant fireball at Bowser, and there's this moment where Bowser's being hurled at it because Zim threw him at the fireball, and Bowser just like looks at it coming at him, and then he closes his eye like he's accepting his death. And he gets flown off into space, like it's the end of Mario Galaxy. So who knows what happens to him. And then something happens where the death egg gets destabilized, and now it's starting to crash to Earth. And everyone's packing because like, we gotta get out of here, we gotta do something. Sonic's like, oh god, what do we do? Shadow, you gotta help us. But Shadow's trying to get on the way out because he was only here to actually rescue the E-series, and he took them all out and got them reprogrammed by going Super Shadow. And he's like, I'm only here for the E-series. I care not how you get out of this situation. And him and Sonic have another lover's quarrel, and then Sonic goes, but Shadow, remember Maria, weren't you designed to help humanity? Isn't that what she would want? And Shadow realizes, damn, Hedgehog, you've got me there. And he teleports everyone back to Yoshi's Island. But the issue is that the Death Egg's still crashing down towards Earth. It's going to collapse in Earth. I don't know which dimensions Earth, but it's going to crash into him. So everyone's freaking out about that. And Shadow realizes the only way to deal with it is the same way he dealt with the Ark. So he takes the power of the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emeralds and the E-Series, and he goes super again, and he's blasting off and blasting towards the crashing Death Egg. And you know it's serious because he breaks out a Protect the Emeralds, Sonic the Hedgehog. And it's all dramatic, and then they're all zooming off towards the Death Egg and the E-Series. They make this giant shield, pushing it back up into space, and Shadow makes this beautiful speech, and then with his last power, he goes Chaos Control. And it's just the ending of Sonic Adventure 2 again. And I mean that in the best way possible. It's still that same level of greatness. And like everyone's some like, oh man, Shadow dead. He was the greatest dude around. And Sonic's sad because he lost his boyfriend again. And then all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh yeah, Eggman's still here and we gotta deal with him. And then all of a sudden a submarine comes out and Yoshi's with guns come out and they shoot Eggman. And Bill from that one episode of Invader Zim shows up and Gaz is here. And they've been following them on the trail the whole time, and Eggman wasn't actually shot dead or anything. It was just a tranquilizer dart. And that's it. They stopped Eggman, and everyone just kind of has this brief moment of reflection on everything. And just, they have a party, and everyone's good, and they all get sent off back to their own universes, and it's a happy ending. And Sonic reflects on Shadow and how he misses the dude, but you know, he's always going to fight for his own thing, and Shadow's a beautiful guy like that, and he's the greatest of all time, and I love him so much. And we get an epilogue on how everyone's lives kind of went back to normal, and it ends on Sonic running off into the distance, always looking for new adventures as Amy chases him. And it's just a good feeling ending, and it's like one of the most best ways you could end a Sonic story. And that's how the series ends. Well, also there's a scene of Eggman in prison, but you know, that's it.
look at yourself. Inside your heart, you will find a special place to align. When you feel right, look at yourself. Inside your mind, you see connect eternity. Inside your heart, you will find a special place to align. When you feel right, look at yourself. Inside your mind, you will see cosmic eternity.
And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you couldn't tell by the length of this video and how hyped I got in the finale description, this is a series that means a lot to me. Ever since I discovered it a decade plus ago, I've just been in love with it, and it's meant a lot to me, and it's played over and over again in my mind, and I like sharing it with people. And this is a series that's kind of harder to share, so I thought, why not do a video about it? And that way I can show it off, and show it off in a way that other people can actually see what's going on in ways that words wouldn't be able to help. And if this caught your interest in any way, do just check out the series. There's a lot of stuff in here that I didn't describe that you should see for yourself. Do reactions to it, do watch parties. Instead of doing a Super Mario Bros. Z rewatch or something, watch this one instead. I promise you it's worth your time. Now, this isn't the end of the story. As I mentioned around the start of this video, this is just part one of a 3-part trilogy, and there is so much going on in part 2 and especially part 3 that I can't wait to talk about. But for now, I think we can wrap up this episode of the Crossover Chronicle pretty well. The mentioned MixUp is a great series, and I cannot recommend it enough. It makes me hype, and I'm always going to talk about it with this passion and excitement. So yeah, check it out. It's worth your time. I just want to say thank you so very, very much for checking this video out and making it all the way to the end. I so wanted to have a video out much earlier, but making this video took a lot of time, and I had plans for how I wanted my channel to go in the future, so I needed to get a lot of parts for it. I didn't just want to be talking over still images and unedited footage of gameplay or whatever the topic was. I always wanted to have an avatar, and again, finding an artist and finding someone who can get my vision out and with the right style and everything, that's not easy to do, especially since these kinds of avatars aren't exactly easy to look up for in commission spaces and the like. So I'm glad with how I look, I'm glad with how everything is going so far, and I already have a few plans on the videos I want to make next. And while I can't say when that next video is or what exactly it's going to be, just know that I do have plans for the future. I have plans for Crossover Chronicle and for videos not in that series and just in general. I've got plans. I've got the tools to make those plans come to life. So please consider sticking around and seeing what comes of it. I gotta get some thanks out to a lot of people who helped me throughout the various process of making this video, because this wasn't just a single effort. Making videos like this require the help of many people for feedback or getting the right parts, and I want to make sure everyone involved in it gets their dues. Once again, I want to say thank you so much to Tails the Evergreen for designing these sprites. Your work is amazing, and I am so happy with how I look and how it turned out. Steve DeWist, thank you again for the background and for the amazing thumbnail. You got the vibes of this series down pat and the vibes I'm going for in my channel in general. It looks amazing. I want to say thank you to World Ender for the new series logo. I like it. I've always been a fan of dark and industrial things, one of my favorite series being Doro Hedoro, and one of my favorite movies being David Lynch's Eraserhead. Special thanks to Flare Guy for making the Time Gal based UI. He helped get me the Time Gal name to begin with, and ripping those from the sprite sheets and editing them to make them look like this. That is so cool to me, who knows nothing about video editing and just all the little touches and flourishes. Thank you so much, man. You're the best. The music you're hearing behind me comes from user Kazu, who I commissioned for this piece, and it is banging, and it's just a real, I love it. It's short but loopable, and it's just got that good underground dark vibe that I'm looking for in everything. The Nintendo logo from the intro that I played from the opening, that was actually harder to find. I couldn't find it anywhere because it's kind of harder to look up, and I got the help from Twitter user XJLuna who found that, so big thanks to them. Big thanks to the users Ethereal Worlds, Video Witch, Mara Ganger, Demented Gate, and Is Your Guy for feedback through various makings of this video and giving me points to improve on what to work and how this make this whole thing look more presentable. Even just the idea of placing my avatar in this corner here and not just in the center of the screen, that was a big help. And also thanks to Pulpin, Yeet, Skeet, and Shady Frog for also your feedback. It was very valuable to me. And just thank you to everyone in general who's, again, stick around and subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a like and leave a comment. That always helps me knowing what can be fixed, and I'm a sucker for comments and feedback on this thing. And if you want to get a thanks of your own, donate to my Ko-Fi at ko-fi.com/timegal25. Donating between the time this video goes up and whenever I finish work on my next video, I will be sure to shout you out and give thanks for that. I do kind of want to make stuff like this, you know, part of my life. So getting support for it, no matter how small, would be great. And I don't feel ready enough to do something like a Patreon where I'd feel more like I'd have to do things like streams or bonus content, and I don't know if I'm at a speed where I can do that yet. So again, if you go to ko-fi.com/timegal25 and donate even just once, I'll make sure to give you a shout out in the next video. I think that should be everything. Again, thank you so much for this. And this has been TimeGal25, and I'll see you next time.